Well, the South African Council of Churches says more urgency is needed to implement the state capture report. The final tranche of that report made a number of recommendations around procurement reforms, protection of whistleblowers, to make sure that we are never vulnerable to the capture of the state by criminals ever again. Well, I'm joined now by Bishop Malusi Mpumlwana, General Secretary of the SACC. Bishop, thank you so much for your time. I think you heard what Chief Justice Raymond Zondo had to say. He's deeply worried that as it stands, we don't have enough reforms in place to make sure that we won't have state capture 2.0. Do you share his worry?
Oh, yes, definitely. We are very concerned that this whole process is very slow. There isn't enough urgency, we believe, in implementation of the recommendations that, I mean, they didn't cover everything, but I think those recommendations, at the very least, could have made a huge difference in the fight against corruption and its cancer in our society. Above all, there are two things that we finger as SACC. One is the tardiness in bringing to book, to justice, those who are fingered in the Zondo Commission, especially to ensure that there are high-profile convictions. Secondly, we are very concerned that what we believe is the actual nerve center of the fight against corruption, the importance of the whistleblower community, that the environment is not yet created for them to really be able to do what they do. These are very courageous people who, because of their own consciences, stand up and say, come what may, I will report what I see. South Africa should be very grateful to them and should be protecting them. And I think that if nothing else, we ought to do something about them, including creating a special whistleblower fund, because these people lose everything when they stand up. They lose their credibility, their space, they get ostracized, and everything terrible happens to them. Some of them even die. And I think that the SACC would like to say, on a pastoral basis, we are appealing for the creation of a special fund that will assist and support them across the board from the beginning, before they give their whistleblowing and after that. We will be following this up in a webinar on the 5th of July, because we think it's important to pick it up. But we're asking South Africans to own these recommendations and make sure that every one of us participates in following up and ensure that nothing is left to be lost between the cracks. We must own the Zondo Commission, and it is bought at a high price, nearly R1 billion of our money. We must own it.
Yeah, you're quite right. And it is in part up to the public pressure to make sure that the politicians are doing what they need to. We are looking for big wins, and I think big wins, getting the big fish, the Guptas, the big architects of state capture, seeing a conviction there, which we have not as yet, would be a huge boost, I think, for a sense of restoring a morality to South Africa. We do know that in terms of the Transnet and the Eskom state capture, which were massive, currently we do know that Brian Molefe, Siyabonga Gama and others are in fact slowly being brought through the justice system. They were arrested. They have not yet gone to trial, however. The only state capture case that started going into the trial situation, the New Lane case, which is linked to Estina, collapsed. So we go too fast and we don't do all the detailed work that gets us a conviction. We go too slow and we lose impetus. We do know that some work is being done. How do we get it right? Because there's so much to be done.
We do understand that there are lots of complexities in this, and for this reason, we have actually written to the National Prosecuting Authority to say, can you please take us into your confidence, enable us to understand, because as you say, once things are slow, even if it is because of the processes that need to be slow, we don't have the understanding. We just feel that not enough is being done. And we also see that cases collapse because they're taken too fast. And that's why we're saying, can the NPA give us, we need more updates. I think South Africans need to know that things are happening, even if they're slow. There must be a regular update, something like once a month we know, this and that is happening. This is where we are with this one, and we're still investigating 5 others. That kind of thing gives South Africans confidence. And that's what we mean when we say we want to own the report. It is ours. It was bought with our money, and South Africans are entitled to know what is going on at every stage. And that's why, therefore, in that case, we will not be caught in this dilemma that you are pointing out of too slow or too fast.
So talk to me, I mean, it's been a year since the Commission wrapped up, but of course we've known about state capture for many years before that. What are the quick reforms? You've mentioned a fund for whistleblowers, but what are the quick reforms that could have been implemented in the last year that you're disappointed not to see?
Well, the fund that we're talking about is not amongst the recommendations. But the key thing that I think would be important in the quick reforms is that of right now, whistleblowers, for example, are considered for protection after they have become witnesses to a case. But you know what? They get killed long before there is any indictment. And that is why we have to change that to say once a person becomes a whistleblower, then at that point, the person needs to have legal protection and the support as well as protection from victimization in the workplace. But those things are not in place at this time. We need to have, one of those things is the procurement system to be protected. And I think that there are some moves in this direction to have a procurement system that is independent and outside of the everyday management of departments. Hopefully, when that comes about, it will make a difference, because then you have got less of a case where Malusi, who is a DG or whatever officer, might want to sort of kick for touch and kick things up so that when I retire, I go over there to get. Now, these are the kinds of things you can protect if you create this system. So there are some quick wins that are systemic, and I know that when those are done, it will make a difference. But the problem is, even if plans are in place, we hear nothing. There's too much silence. There's not enough being talked about. So the key thing is to have regular updates. There must be a state capture report update on an ongoing basis, and therefore that will keep the confidence of the South African public, such as we are.
Yeah, I want to speak to you about, and we do know that the President has spoken about reforms to better protect whistleblowers, but everything does take time, and in the meantime, we have to make sure that we are not vulnerable. And it strikes me, reading through so much of the state capture evidence, that any law can be broken. Even the best laws in the world can be broken if you can bribe someone to look the other way, which is essentially what happened at very, very high levels around state capture, and it became completely endemic. So that speaks more to the fact that perhaps what we need is some sort of rejuvenation of morals and ethics, which is also not a quick process. But I suppose that's pretty much your purview as a man of God. Talk to me about what needs to happen within our society morally to make that change. And I tell you why. Because when ordinary people see the big fish not paying their taxes, stealing our hard-earned tax money, there's a sense of, well, it doesn't matter, everyone's doing it. And that's the problem you're fighting against when you're trying to morally rejuvenate a country.
Three things. I think the first one is we are not socializing for public morals. You don't get it at school. You don't get it in the public broadcaster or in such as you have even in the eNCA. There isn't a program that actually focuses on being a better South African. So the first thing is socialization. We're not socializing for this. In fact, it leads to the second thing. The second thing is that we have glamorized the ill-begotten, gains, and that in fact, if you go to communities where there are drug lords, the drug lord becomes the role model, and so the role models that we have are the wrong ones. We glamorize the wrong things. The third thing is that we privatize our interests because we don't have what we call a common South African-ness with public values that we all can be proud. That you can't say to somebody, I mean, I've heard people say, oh, what so-and-so has done is un-ANC. this is a common language, for example, in the African National Congress. I would like to hear more people say what so-and-so has done is un-South African. We don't have a concept of what is un-South African, and so that we therefore build a common nationhood that has got certain basic values. Say, you know, if that person is South African, they will not do this and this and that. I can give you a small, very little example. I was traveling in some country in Europe, and I see schoolboys, a group of schoolboys in a lift. And you know what they said? They said, "Sir," and I said, "That sounds like a South African boy. Where are you from?" They say, "We're from South Africa." You know, there are certain mannerisms and things that you should be able to say. South Africans will morally not accept certain things. And I know that it's a tall order because we steal from work, we steal pens, we steal printing paper, we do all these things. You know, I worry because 80% of South Africans are supposed to be Christian. Therefore, all these thieves and these wrong people are in our pews, in our congregations. You're right, it's on our lap.
All right. Well, thank you so much for chatting to us this evening. Much appreciated. Bishop Malusi Mpumlwana, General Secretary of the SACC. And news just in is that Parliament has responded to what Chief Justice Zondo had to say. Parliament says it's shocked and it strongly objects to the remarks made by the Chief Justice today on state capture. In a statement, Parliament says it's inappropriate for the Chief Justice to engage in public attacks on Parliament. It says the criticism by Zondo is unfortunate, lacks merit and undermines the principles of separation of powers. The other part of the statement, it says Parliament is currently developing rules and guidelines to enhance its oversight processes. Cooperation between Parliament and the executive also being fostered to facilitate executive attendance without the need for additional legislation or rules. These steps dedicate or show Parliament's dedication to implement the recommendations of the State Capture Commission. Had the Chief Justice reached out to Parliament with his concerns, he would have been comprehensively apprised of all the ongoing work. So Parliament not at all pleased with what the Chief Justice had to say. Well,